Travel, focus on my career, things like that. My career will become my baby.
I honestly just want to get right into my career.
It's absolutely insulting to your entire bloodline. Everything everyone above you has ever done and struggled for. All the times your grandparents went to work when they didn't feel like it, just for you to exist, for your selfish ass to say, no, me and my passions and my dreams and my drawings and my Instagram page is worth more than ever having children.
This typifies him. While that's not my mode of presentation, that is the content of my life's thinking. A woman exactly like that, 50 years old, called my show, and she called in to say she has a PhD, she makes well into 6 figures, she has a great job, she goes home exactly what he described, to an empty house, and she regrets terribly that she bought the career Kool-Aid. There's nothing wrong in a woman having a career. There's something wrong if she thinks that will bring her satisfaction.
He just said that Andrew Tate is suing him for defamation, allegedly. W. Tate. Henny, Chris, is here. Thank you so much. Hey, you know what?
Sense calling him a rapist every day on Twitter and going massively viral.
Really?
Is, yeah.
Okay, well, then he deserves it.
Just on that, okay? I don't like a lot of the things that Andrew Tate says. You have to address what he says. So many people open up, and I actually saw this. It's very rare that, I don't know how, have you ever heard of like actual malice? Like New York Times or Sullivan? It's very hard to sue public people for defamation. But when Ethan is literally going on Twitter
Especially
and
as a
saying,
public figure.
Yeah, yes, that's
Right.
the actual malice. But Ethan is actually on Twitter saying like, oh, like a sex offender, like victim trafficker or whatever, right? That's bullshit. That's not true. You know that's not true. You know that's not true. The conviction isn't there. You could say it was investigated for. If you want to throw that out, fine, fucking go for it. But the conviction is not there.
Yeah.
So that's some bullshit. Like I said, when I go to forums of people making fun of me personally, it's because I know I won the debate.
Yeah.
When he's out here just making all these personal attacks, and the left has this problem. If you don't like what Andrew Tate says, it's so much easier to tear somebody down than it is to put your own figure up against them. Who are your role models? Who should men be trying to emulate on your side? What are the values that you're selling people? Because you can't just attack, and then at the end of the day say like, buy my merch and smoke weed. Like, you have to have something else there for people.
Telling you guys, man, do not commit to girls that prioritize their social media over everything else, man. These clout chasers, these girls that want to be all over, these girls that want to be the stars, they want to be posting stories, they want to have their ass all over the place, they want to look at my life, it's so lit. Don't commit to those girls. I'm telling y'all, man, it's gonna be a problem down the road. Whether it's her being a hoe, her compromising your safety, her causing issues for you in the future, it never works when girls are attention whores and social media whores. It never fucking works. It's always gonna bring you fucking problems, and you're gonna have to deal with them, not her, because women are terrible at dealing with their own fucking problems.
Since Ben Shapiro read my piece, I Regret Being a Slut, I figured it should be out there in my own words and voice because it doesn't sound quite like me. I really just wanted to take a minute, read the piece in my own voice, and tell you about the reaction that I've received and tell you about some of the things I've heard and some of the things that have been put on this essay that I don't feel are what I was trying to say at all. So I'm going to read it, which I've never done this before. So we'll see how this goes. I regret being a slut. Upon opening Louise Perry's new book, The Case Against the Sexual Revolution, A New Guide to Sex in the 21st Century, I'm moved to tears by the dedication for the women who learned it the hard way. Unlike many other people who have read and reviewed Perry's work, reading her book wouldn't be some academic exercise in contemplating how liberal feminism has let women down. It wouldn't be evaluating what those poor sluts over there have endured in the wake of the sexual revolution. Reading her book was personal. I am one of those sluts. I'm a case study for her thesis, a cautionary tale. I knew this book was going to be difficult, and it made me realize it's time to finish this essay, one I've been trying to write for 4 years. It's a tough needle to thread. I'm grateful for the ability to control my reproductive cycle and make my own money, but that freedom has come at a price. The dark side of the sexual revolution is that even though it liberated women, unyoking sex from the consequences has primarily benefited men. I was first inspired to write this piece when a 19-year-old woman I used to wait tables with asked me, "Bridget, have you ever regretted having sex with a man?" I laughed. Yeah, all of them. That's not entirely true. There was my first love in high school and my first husband. But if I'm honest with myself, of the dozens of men I've been with, at least the ones I remember, I can only think of a handful I don't regret. The rest I would put in the category of casual, which I would define as sex that is either meaningless or mediocre or both. If I get really honest with myself, I'd say most of these usually drunken encounters left me feeling empty and demoralized. and worthless. I wouldn't have said that at the time, though. At the time, I would have told you I was liberated, even while I tried to drink away the sick feeling of rejection while my most recent hookup didn't call me back. At the time, I would have said one-night stands made me feel emboldened. But in reality, I was using sex like a drug, trying unsuccessfully to fill a hole inside me with men. Pun intended. I know regretting most of my sexual encounters is not something a sex-positive feminist who used to write a column for Playboy is supposed to admit. And for years, I didn't. Let me be clear. Being a slut and sleeping with a lot of men is not the only behavior I regret. Even more damaging was what I told myself in order to justify the fact that I was disposable to these men. I told myself I didn't care. I didn't care when a man ghosted me. I didn't care when he left in the middle of the night or hinted that he wanted me to leave. The walks of shame, the blackouts, the anxiety. The lie I told myself for decades was, I'm not in pain, I'm empowered. I knew it would be hard to read this. Looking back, it isn't a surprise that I lied to myself, because from a young age, sex was something I was lied to about. Long before I ever had sex, I felt ashamed of my natural sexual urges and awkward in my blossoming female body. Growing up Catholic, all I remember about sex was feeling bad about it before I even knew what it was. I only knew that sex before marriage was wrong. Even the thought of a sexual act or masturbation filled me with debilitating guilt. The first time I kissed a boy, I was convinced I'd be punished, struck down by an angry, misogynistic God. As I got older, I was told to guard my virginity. Well-meaning mothers and aunts were clear that I needed to withhold sex in order to get a man to love and respect me. Sex was a commodity, a priceless gem I had to hang on to that increased in value the longer I held it. It made me feel like property, and although I don't think that was the intention of the wise women who had learned their own lessons the hard way, for me, sex became inextricably linked to my self-worth. The shame and guilt I grew up with regarding sex felt oppressive. I resented the double standard that men could be promiscuous and it would raise their status, and a woman would be slut-shamed for similar behavior. My burgeoning sexuality would unfold as a reaction to these repressive religious orthodoxies, old-school notions of sexual status, and trauma. I lost my virginity at 17 to my boss at a restaurant where I worked. And a year later, I experienced my first sexual trauma. I felt damaged and dirty, and I blamed myself. Everyone responds differently to these situations. I dealt with the overwhelming shame by becoming hypersexual and promiscuous. The culture was right there to pick me up and dust me off. I doubled down on being a proud slut and internalized the biggest and most damaging lie, that loveless sex is empowering. I basked in the girl power glow of that delusion for decades, weaponizing my sexuality while convincing myself I was full of the divine feminine. I was full of shit. I told myself that because I could seduce a man, I was powerful. But as Perry says in her book, women can all too easily fail to recognize that being desired is not the same thing as being held in high esteem. Deep down inside, I knew that to be the case. But as a defense mechanism, I created a man-eater persona. My mantras were rigid. You can either have a career or a relationship, but you can't have both. Intimacy is creepy. Motherhood and children are a trap. Sex is only about power. Another set of lies built on trauma. Sex isn't just about power. It's also about intimacy and vulnerability and trust, things I wanted nothing to do with, because implicit in modern dating is a complete lack of expectations, especially those of chivalry. Whenever a man wanted to pick up the tab or pull out the chair or open the door or pick me up or take me to dinner or see me during the day or wait longer than the first date to have sex, I was shocked and suspicious of them. Was he a serial killer? Casual sex is fraught with insecurity and miscommunication. Intimacy and love are punchlines. When a man I slept with had the courtesy to reach out, I mistook relief for happiness, rewiring my brain to be grateful for the bare minimum. The saddest realization is how low I set the bar. A lifetime of allowing myself to be the other woman, taken for granted or treated like a doormat under the false pretense of being empowered, came to head one night with the arrival of a text message from an on-again, off-again lover. "Good night, baby. I love you," it said, quickly followed by "wrong person." Rock bottom doesn't always look like losing everything or ending up in jail. Sometimes it can be that sick feeling in your gut when you know emotionally you're done. I wanted to be able to have meaningless sex like a guy, but it didn't work. After years of writing for Playboy, I've learned it doesn't work for a lot of men either. For years, I tried unsuccessfully not to catch the feels. Even that expression is so telling about the way emotions are viewed regarding relationships, as if they're a cold or a flu or some kind of sickness you need to get over. I'm not speaking for all women. I know many women with a solid sense of self who happily have loveless sex. This piece won't make them defensive. But a lot of women will read this and bristle, just like I did when I used to read something that pushed back on the lie I'd built my entire identity around. Or maybe you're a trans or non-binary person reading this thinking, what quaint ideas about gender and sex this old tradcon has. And to that I'll say, it makes sense to me that the generation of young women who've experienced and borne witness to some of the worst side effects of unyoking sex from consequence and love that Perry meticulously outlines in her book, Rough Sex, Hookup Culture, and Ubiquitous Porn, would take a look around and decide, I'd rather be a man. Or more accurately, I'd rather not be a woman. But maybe it's the inevitable conclusion to the sexual revolution. Today's youth are fed an even more dangerous lie than the one that was fed about loveless sex. I was told sex doesn't matter. They're being told biology doesn't matter. This is a tragedy. I'm not suggesting we return to some Victorian era notion of sex or some 1950s era ideal about gender roles. I'm now 43 years old, and I'm in the first truly healthy, intimate relationship in my life with my second husband. We recently had a daughter. And in the wake of her birth, I've been thinking a lot about the conversations I'm going to have with her and the conversations I wish I could go back in time and have with young Bridget. I'd tell her, sex can be empowering when you're coming from a position of healthy self-esteem. If you're coming from a place of trauma or insecurity, casual sex won't heal that. In fact, it might set you back and undermine any progress regarding your feelings of self-worth. If you know your value, you're less likely to sleep with someone who doesn't value you. Cherish yourself and you will be cherished. You shouldn't have to withhold sex for a man to respect you. He should respect you regardless. Sexual empowerment has nothing to do with how many people you do or don't sleep with. It has to do with how comfortable you are in your skin, no matter your decision. It's not about waiting until you're in love to have sex. It's about making sure that first you love yourself. Don't ignore that nagging gut instinct telling you sexual liberation leaves you feeling unfulfilled.
Facts can be what I have been through and what I have felt. That doesn't relate to every man and woman in general.
Facts can be based on what you felt.
Oh my gosh, no, that goes back to him saying that it's emotional.
That's crazy.
No. Facts, right?
Listen.
Define facts. What do you mean? Why are you laughing? I'm asking him to define facts the same way
niggas just like making jokes out of girls. They get pleasure from that. Like assholes.
Right?
Like they like humiliating girls. They get pleasure off humiliating bitches.
She doesn't know what a fact is.
All right, define it then.
The truth.
Okay, the truth is based on what I have been through.
No, it's not.
And that's statistically proven everything we have spoken
He said no, it's not.
The truth is what's in reality. You don't want to operate in reality. You want to operate in your head.
So what am I living on? I'm living on a fake life?
Delusion.
Oh, for real? That ass?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Bad. Damn.
Here's the thing.
It's okay.
That's crazy.
Shout out to all the delusional.
I'll just make this very, very simple. There's one truth.
Never change.
Your appreciation of the truth is up to you, but it's one truth. So your experiences may not necessarily reflect reality. That's the truth.
All right, bad.
Like what you experience, it may not be how the world really operates.
versus social media.
Getting your identity back, because the identity that you made the money under is unacceptable for a husband.
Okay.
And I know this sounds crazy, but real talk, you took drastic measures, so now you got to go. I'm just gonna say people don't like it, but fatherless homes create awful women. It is what it is, you know. They create awful people in general, you know. Dads keep daughters off stripper poles and sons out of jail. You know, your dad is supposed to be the first line of defense to keep you from how do I say this, the government like fucking you up. And what I mean by that is that, you know, if your dad isn't there, then you become a product of your environment. You become a drug dealer, you become a criminal, whatever it is, because you don't have that first barrier of defense where your dad could find the drugs in your backpack and be like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? Smack the shit out of you, you know, before the cops catch you, and then bam, now you got a felony conviction. Or the dad used to be a critical part of the mating process, right? Where he would vet the man that comes to take her on a prom, or he would vet the man that she was dating to ensure that he wasn't going to be a piece of shit that leaves her. And more importantly, people are not going to like this either when I say it, women are awful at selecting their own mates. The father is the best at selecting the mate. There's a reason why arranged marriages works for so much. Yes, are there shitty arranged marriages? There always are. But
that's the only way out of this problem is arranged marriages. like especially for the Black community. When they talk about Black community, how do we make shit right in the Black community? I think starting with arranged marriages is the first place you start.
Yeah, or at least involving the father in the mate selection process, because when you leave a woman to her own devices to pick her mate, what's going to happen is she's going to go off of emotional adrenaline. She's going to want the bad boy. She's going to want the tall guy that looks good, the guy that pretty much is going to be unemotionally available and that's going to have sex with her and then not take her seriously. The father is going to be able to find a man that, fuck your emotions, bitch. I'm going to find you the best guy that's going to provide you security long term, that's going to give you a child and protect and provision for you.
As a woman who makes 7 figures, like, my money does not retain my relationship. Like, my ability to,
there you go.
If he gets home at 6 a.m., me making breakfast when he gets home is what's retaining my relationship. It's never been my ability to, I'm a Forbes lister, top of my game, but that doesn't retain my relationship. Me cooking from scratch 3 times a day retains my relationship and retains me going on
3 times a day?
Yes, from scratch. I was on Food Network, but like me being able to cook, me being able to upkeep our home and like putting labels on everything, doing weirdo organizing shit is what's retaining my relationship.
It's not weird. It's fantastic.